Okay, hi everybody. You should be able to see me and my screen. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here. Sorry for the delay, with just a couple of housekeeping items, and then I'll hand it over to Sara. So thank you again. Hopefully you just joined Coffee and Bagel and enjoyed some time meeting other attendees. We will be randomly selecting a participant to be the winner of a $50 Grubhub gift card this time. The winner will be receiving an email from us in just a few minutes. So please be on the lookout for that. At the end of the day, we will announce all Coffee and Bagel winners on the conference platform homepage. The session you have just joined is the LIHTC Home Compliance Refresher session, which will be presented by Sara Surprenant at ProLink Solutions. Before we start the session, I'd like to take a few minutes to do some housekeeping as we've continued to do each session. So I'll go ahead and skip ahead to our next screen. First, on the right-hand side of your screen, you have access to that chat feature. This particular session is live, and Sara will, while she's focused on the presentation, we do have Kelly Insignias, who's our HFA Senior Product Manager at ProLink. She's behind the scenes monitoring the chat throughout the session. So please feel free to post questions or comments throughout the session. Kelly will either respond to you in real time or follow up with you after the session. And please, again, note that those comments and chats are visible to all attendees. So that's great to share some of the questions and answers that are kind of shot back and forth between us as we go through these sessions. Also, we have on the right side of your screen access to the poll feature. So throughout this session, there will be 3 poll questions displayed one by one, and you'll have that poll question open to you for answer for about 30 seconds, after which we'll close it and then share the results of that poll right away once we have those answers kind of within those 30 seconds. So we encourage you to participate in that with us as well. Okay, and then just another reminder, under that resources link, you'll have access to a copy of the materials from each of our sessions, including this one. And then you can download those at any time before, during, or after these sessions. Also, we're offering all of the, well, many at least, of the sessions that we and playlists that we hosted for our ProLink Technology 2022 and 2021 conferences. So please take advantage of that. They're available. If you scroll down on the conference homepage, you will see the playlist and individual sessions available for those years that we have kind of in our treasure trove of recorded sessions. So please use them as supplemental material in addition to the live sessions we're offering this year. Okay, so now without further ado, I'll introduce our session speaker. This is Sara Surprenant. Sara is our customer success rep and trainer here at ProLink. I'm sure many of you have also interacted with Sara over the years. So Sara, I will let you go ahead and take over screen share, and I'll be here to support you. You can go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just doing my clicking. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us at our 2023 ProLink Tech Live event. Today, we are going to just kind of have a refresher on our compliance program functionality. These are going to be things you might already know, you may have forgotten, or some things may be absolutely new to you. We did advertise this as primarily LIHTC and home, which that's a true statement, but I'm going to kind of throw in some stuff about set-asides because I know from a customer success standpoint that we do get a lot of questions about additional set-asides. So I'm going to highlight a few things that might be helpful and might be new for you. So let's get started. All right, the LIHTC program is what we're going to talk about first. And I just want to kind of add that we're not going to go over any AIT stuff since Kelly already did a bang up job with that. I anticipate next year we might have a little more information or a deeper dive into that once everybody gets in and starts using it. So just manage that expectation. We're not going to be talking a lot about that. So coming into this, my assumption is that a lot of you do have familiarity with using the functionality. And this is not so much training as it is an overview, but I'm going to hit the high points just to make sure that we've covered as much as possible. So when we talk about setting up the LIHTC program in ProLink HFA, you all know that we can only have one LIHTC program at a time. And so when you select your program for LIHTC and you save it, it's going to become disabled. And when you go add another program, you can only add home or additional set-asides. Allow pre-program review. I know some of you do use this, but what this does, it allows you to actually bring in tenant events and do some evaluating before your official compliance start date, as long as you have a projected place in service date on your building. So even though you're not officially reporting, you can start entering tenant events before the compliance start date for whatever reason that you need to do that. The recertification requirements based on your partnership agreement, what that's going to be, you know that we have generally within compliance period is kind of what I see the most, but we also have anniversary date within a certain amount of days of the anniversary date. And then if you don't have any recertifications required, you can select that requirement as well. We also have an elderly designation option, and I don't think I've seen a lot of people use this, but what that's going to do is when you actually run your compliance review for LIHTC, it's going to generate exceptions based on the age of the person who's living in the unit. And I don't know if that's what you've done right now. We just have 100%. So basically, if you select this, you want to make sure 100% of your tenants are 55 and over. Otherwise, it's going to give you a compliance exception saying, nope, this person's not old enough. But that's another functionality I'm not sure people are aware of and that you need to use for whatever reason, because I wanted to highlight that just for a second. All right, deep rent skew. This is another item that I'm not sure how many people use, but we do have the option if you want to go in here and do your deep rent skew election. That's a tough one to say. You can do that. And you know, it applies to your move-in events, your research updates, and it will check for the next available unit rule as well. One of the things it'll do once you've marked any units for deep rent skew, you need to lock them. But this will tell you if you have a unit out there that's not a low income unit or a tenant event that is not LIHTC, but it's marked for deep rent skew, it's going to give you an exception regarding that. And then you're going to see missing requirements, which is something we talk about. A lot of missing requirements will get validated from the tenant portal side. And this is one of those that should. But if for whatever reason it doesn't, this is going to show you that there are no units that are fixed when you have it selected on your program, and also tell you that it's required when you have this selected. So if you ever see, you know, any kind of missing requirements about deep rent skew, you want to go back to the program and make sure that you have your deep rent skew information updated. So missing requirements. This is something that happens when you first evaluate your compliance review for a given year. Now, a lot of these are caught during validation when your owner agents and partners enter their tenant events through the tenant portal, but there are some that are specifically internal missing requirements that, you know, has nothing to do with the tenant data that the owner agents or partners have entered. This is something you might have missing in your data set up on your side. Like if you do not have a county selected on your building. When we talk about jurisdiction, that's what we mean. Jurisdiction and county are kind of interchangeable. And if you've forgotten to upload your rent limits for the program for a specific year, that's something that could pop up. And then if you haven't, based on like a certain effective date for a certain place in service day on the building, I know a lot of times when you see these, if the steps of adding a county or uploading the rent limits, rent and income limits, do not resolve the missing requirements. At that point, generally, you should put in a ticket. So myself or Jessica can help you figure out what exactly is missing. And if we have to bring in the big guns with the development, we can. But generally, we can usually troubleshoot these relatively easily if you get stuck and you just don't want to spend a lot of time hunting down everything when you've already had this information provided in your system. Now we're going to talk about the edit compliance review and some things that I know when I first started learning this section that would confuse me, the differences between some of the statuses that we see when we do a compliance review, specifically for LIHTC. The compliance review status, that is just for the compliance review, not necessarily the program. And these are kind of the definitions. When it's pending, it means you have a record that exists, but you haven't evaluated yet. In process means that you've got the tenant events in and you have evaluated it, but you haven't reconciled everything to the point where you're ready to finalize your compliance review. And then you can also unfinalize it if you need to make any updates or anything like that. Then that's what this little informational box in the heading is going to mean. Now, program status is blank when you have tenant events, but you have not evaluated them yet. This will just show up as blank. Failed, if there's at least one exception that has generated that is not overwritten. And then passed, if there are no exceptions and all exceptions are overridden and you're ready to finalize, which I think is what everybody wants and what we all strive for there. The other section we're going to talk about is the federal applicable fraction set aside status. So this is something that we often talk about, and I kind of wanted to spell it out so you kind of understand exactly what each column header means and what it stands for and where it comes from. Applicable fraction, this particular value is going to come from the BEN record. So when you put in your applicable fraction on the BEN, it's going to display here because that's what you're saying. It's like 100% of these are low income. Unit fraction is going to divide the number of LIHTC units that do not have errors and are marked as active and suitable for occupancy for the BEN for the compliance period. So in this particular example, only 38% of the units have met the requirement to be part of this collection. Square foot fraction is going to use square feet, and that's something, whoops. I messed up. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can get this back. There we go. Sorry, I get a little nervous when everything doesn't go according to plan and I step on my own feet. Square foot fraction, if you have a config setting for that, it's going to use that instead of the unit fraction. The set aside status basically means it's not meeting your minimum set aside. So in this particular case, you can see it's failed because we do not have 40% of the units at 60% AMI. So that's where this comes in for failed. Goal set aside is something that you can set on the BEN. Like if you have let's say your applicable fraction is only 80%, but you want it to be 100%. Once you set that on the BEN, it's going to look at that and it's also going to compare, like you want 100%, that's your goal. We're going to calculate and show you if it's going to pass or fail based on that, because the goal set aside will override your applicable fraction value in compliance engine. And your calculated set aside is going to use the unit calculations unless the square feet option is true in config settings, which is this. I don't know how many of you use that. I am aware of one agency that absolutely uses it, but if you set this for true, it's going to use the square foot fraction to calculate rather than the unit fraction. So let's talk about the calculate applicable fraction set aside button. What this is going to do, if you have some, I don't know, some events or some exceptions that you can account for, these are things that you can overwrite. It's valid to do that. You've consulted with your owner agent and or your partners to say, hey, this is over income, or this is incorrect, or this is, transient, something like that. You can talk to your owner agents and you can choose to override those exceptions. Now, after you've overridden them and you've saved it, it's not going to update your unit fractions because you're going to have to click the calculate AFSA button. let me go back. I just did this again. Hang on a second, because I wanted to show this in the system. I'm going to bring up this particular one, which I've called Notting Hill. So give me a second and let me bring this up, because I kind of want to show you what that looks like in practice. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, so we are on 2020. So let me bring this up. 2020 compliance reviews. Now is when I should play the Jeopardy music, Brie. Okay. So we'll look at 2020. And because I've just set up this data to have a lot of exceptions, because I wanted to go through and kind of look at what these calculations are going to look like before and after we calculate the applicable fraction set aside. There's a few in here that I'm going to need to override. And I'm probably going to overwrite all of them and show you how to do that if you don't already know, which most of you already, I think, know how to do it when you need to overwrite all of them and you want to finalize. So this particular one has, we're at 38 and 38.26. So it has failed based on the applicable fraction. So all of these I can override except for one. And these just have a ridiculous amount of rent charged on them. But the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to cover this in another slide. I can actually wait on that. I'll wait on that one. This is one that when you override it, it's not going to allow you to finalize it, but we're going to cover that in a minute. I'm just going to override this and put test and hit save, because it's going to override everything in here. And then once it does that, your unit fraction and your square foot fraction is not going to change until you hit this little button, until you hit the calculate applicable fraction set aside button. So we haven't changed anything here. But now if I go up here and I get calculate, when you hover over it, it's going to tell you, it's going to give you some information, which you can't see from my big offensive blue pointer hand here. But once I calculate it, the system's going to think about it, which you always know the system's thinking about it because you get that little circle up there in your browser. And then it's going to come back and it's going to give us a new value. These have passed. We're at 92%, 91 applicable fraction. We have met the set aside, but we still haven't met the applicable fraction. And there might be a few down here when it says the applicable fraction has not been met. In this scenario, I do have some units that do not have tenant events, so that's causing it to kind of be below the applicable fraction, and that's just a data setup thing. But that's what your calculate applicable fraction and set aside button will do for you once you've overridden your exceptions. So I do know a lot of you do use that, and if some of you don't, now you know. So when we talk about the applicable fraction has not been met as one of our exceptions, let me pop it back and make sure that I'm on the right one. Yep. I want to double and triple check. This means that the applicable fraction from the bin wasn't met, right? So we kind of have like applicable fraction, unit fraction, square foot fraction, all in its own little kind of like section. And then project failed to meet set aside requirement. That means that the minimum set aside hasn't been met. In this example, they've all been passed. But if everything that you see here is passed, you should not get the project failed to meet minimum set aside requirements. So that's kind of the difference there. And when you have a multi-building project, bins that are a part of a multi-building project will be evaluated together. So here you see this is not a multi-building project, and each bin is being calculated on its own. So the set aside has failed separately for all bins except for this one, which passed. But when you have the multi-building project, it's going to calculate everything all at once and pass fail based on the entire project and all the bins that are in your collection. LIHTC program exceptions that we see a lot: gross rent exceeded and household income above eligible limit. If you look in here, we've made some changes over the past year to where these exceptions are going to show you the values that it's pulling based on your tenant event date and your income limit effective date. And in some scenarios where it might use HERA, it's going to tell you that it's using the HERA limit. So it's going to tell you what the tenant rent is based on what the rent limit should be, to make it just a little bit easier when you're going through and trying to be like, well, why is this over the limit? This says it's 972. Oh, and then you can just, look at these and verify in a data view that these are the rents, and then contact the owner agent or your partner and be like, why are these over rent? And discuss that offline. This just flags it for you to say, this looks bad. We're charging too much. What are we going to do about it? Household income above eligible limit. Again, same idea here. It's going to show you what the max income limit is, and it's going to show you what the tenant income is on the tenant event. And it's going to say, this is the max income limit based on AMI, whether that's 20/50 or 40/60. But these exceptions are going to be a little more informative. So where you have the information right there to talk to your owner agents, partners about what you're going to do to resolve these issues. Utility allowance. Sometimes you'll see some utility allowances and how it's not equal to the approved amount for this number of bedrooms. The important thing to note is that utility allowance has to be on the nose. It has to be the exact amount. So in this example, if it's like 84 and is the limit we would have in the actual utility allowances, if it's 85 or 83, whether it's over and under by $1, it's going to generate an exception for this particular tenant event. And again, you need to update that or ask the owner agent to update it and provide updated information for the tenant event, or before you go through that override exercise. You want everything to be just right. So some of the other exceptions we have is the available unit rule. This is displayed if the applicable fraction on the bin is not 100%. And it's going to show you, hey, here, this unit is in violation of the available unit rule based on a market move-in on a specific unit. So this one unit in this example of 301 has created 3 possible violations of the available unit rule. We also have the vacant unit rule. And this is kind of similar but different from the available unit rule. Unit 203 is in potential violation based on this market move-in. So you can see again, this market move-in has caused possible vacant unit rule exceptions on 2 other units. So that gives you, okay, we have to go check this out, find out why this happened. Is it valid? Let's talk to the owner agent partner and find out what's going on and try to reconcile that as per your agency's process. Low income units used on a transient basis. So this is just an IRS rule that bases occupancy 6 months or less. So it's like if someone has moved in on January 1st and they move out before July 1st, that's going to generate the transient basis as an exception. Now, there may be something with a property that it's really okay to do this. Our system's just going to let you know this is happening. You can override it if it's legitimate and make a comment in your on your overridden exception if you need to. But again, these are just things we let you know this is missing. You might want to do a little bit of research on this to find out what's going on. And then for an SRO unit, it's the transient basis exception is going to show when it's 30 days or less. Those are the differences between the SRO unit and absolutely all the other units, regardless of size. I don't think I added the recertification event exception to this particular slide deck because I think we're all super familiar with it by now. Sometimes there might be problems where it doesn't pick up a move-in date from old migrated data, and you guys have been fantastic about reaching out to us to help you reconcile that and fix it so you can move on. So the biggest question we get a lot is, I can't finalize my review and I can't override this exception. And that's because you have to upload a compliance file tracking record. This is just you telling our system, hey, we've gotten the owner certs. Whether or not you've received that data via Procorum and you just want to add a record and put a note like, yep, we got it, taken care of for this year, not a problem. Or if you want to add it and add the files from Proquorum to the owner certification, so it actually lives on the compliance review in ProLink HFA, you can do that if you want to. Other required files, those are, if you have those and they haven't been received, it's not going to keep you from finalizing. That's just another kind of internal thing. It's like, we want these files on this compliance review as well. We want to store them here, which you can do if you don't put them on Proquorum. But whenever you get this, you cannot overwrite it. You can click it, you can save it, but no, when you go to finalize, you're going to hover over and it's going to say, we don't have this, you need to add it. So another thing that we don't talk about a lot is the LIHTC income limits tab. Now, most of you are aware of this. I believe that we have 45-day rule selection defaulted to all the bins. So if your income limits for, let's say in this example, 2021, the new income limits effective date is April 1st. But you want to use the 2020 limits up until 45 days after April 1st for all the 10 events dated. I'm just going to do some math in my head. April 1st through May 15th. All of those would still use the 2020 limits. And then starting with events on the May 16th, then they would start using the 2021 limits. I think that does that just to give you a little bit of time to get for HUD to publish everything, to get everything uploaded into your system and decide which ones you're going to use. Now, if you have a multi-building project, it's going to lump everything all into one. Otherwise, you have to select the 45-day rule for each bin. And this is what it looks like when you have a multi-building project and all the bins that are part of it lumped into one project and then using the 45-day rule. NIMLs, these are, let me bring this up really quick in my system, pop over here. Some of you don't know or may need to know how to put them in the system, and these are completely different than how we normally do our income and rent limit imports. There's just a data view under the HUD folder in your data view section. And when you click on that, that's going to allow you to go into this data view and just add a record for that year based on the limits that you've gotten from the HUD website. So what you do if you were just going to create, we'll pretend we haven't created 2022. You would click new, you would put 2022 in the year up here, and we'll see where that's at here in just a second. I'm going to get through this without having to grab a Kleenex, I swear. And all you do is put in the effective date and which file year it is and the 50% income limits. And then if you want to use NIMLs for whatever reason for your compliance review, then all you would do is select that right here, and it's going to use the limits instead of MTSP. So that's just a kind of the more you know thing right there. All right, so now we're going to do a poll question. How often does your agency use the Allow Pre-Program Review functionality on the LIHTC and Home programs? And so you have 30 seconds for the poll. I don't know if you can hear the Jeopardy music, but I'm playing it. And that is exactly 30 seconds, Sam. Do you have, I'm going to do two things at once. Sam, are you ready for me to go to the poll answers? I'm going to guess that was a no. Hang on, let me go back.
It should show, Sarah. I did put it in the slide.
Are they showing? Did I just get too excited and fly by them? Do I have to click? Oh.
Yeah, it's showing on my end. Let's see.
Well, this is one of those things I really want to know. Amy said try when I
Sarah,
click.
Amy says try clicking one on the slide, but yeah, I guess that just goes to the next one. I'm seeing it on my end
What
currently.
are our results? And we'll just imagine, if you will, that you see this text on the screen.
So we had 4 responses that said often, 1 response that said occasionally, and 16 responses that said, what's a pre-program review?
Okay. You know what? I'm going to hop back up here and talk about the pre-program review again, because that was a lot of people who don't know what the pre-program review is. So bear with me and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program. I'm looking at my watch to see how much time I have. This is going to be on the slide deck when you access it, in case you do not know what a pre-program review is. Where do we go? Where do we go? There we go. Okay. Pre-program review. This is going to be our compliance program. And this allows you to start having your owner agents and partners put in tenant events, as long as you have the projected place and service date on the building prior to the compliance start date. So sometimes this happens, and they want to start putting things in, just having, so you know that they're kind of not starting from scratch. Each agency is different for how you'd want those. That allows you to import or add tenant events prior to the compliance start date, when you have the projected place and service date populated on the buildings prior to the compliance start date. So that is what we were talking about there. So I'm gonna breeze through these real quick to get to where we need to go. Thank you for letting me take a quick detour, because that was a lot of people who didn't know what a pre-program review was. And if you want to talk more about that after we have our sessions, just put in a support ticket and reach out to us and we can talk about it. And if that's something that you would find a reason to do or not. All right, so now we're going to move on to the home program. And if you do have any questions, make sure to pop them in the chat, because Kelly's in there watching along. I think we're going to be able to get through this. I'm looking at my time. We're good. So the home program, I'm not sure how many of our agencies use them. I know that there's a handful for sure that do. On the compliance program, besides putting your normal information about selecting the home program and the compliance start date and compliance end date, you have the option of which home property type you're going to use, if it's fixed or floating, and how many home units, and whether or not transfers triggered the NAUR. You can do that. And it tells you if it's checked, this is what it's going to do. Once you get all your units updated, because that's where you designate something as a home fixed unit, is at the unit level, you want to lock it. And I can tell you, like, once you get your program set up and you know these are fixed and they're not going to change, you want to lock them, because when you go do your compliance review and you're trying to finalize it, it's going to object and say you need to lock your fixed units. Then you have the income limits and rent limits on the home program and how you're going to set those up. When you just first create the home program, these are the values it will default to. You can update those if you need to. And if you want to use FMR for rent limits and put percentages in there, you can do that as well. And some of the text I put in here, and I'm not going to read it to you. I don't want you guys to go into nap time with like a nap time story. Otherwise I would. But this kind of gives you an idea of what it's looking for and how our system calculates this. So that's going to be on the home program setup FMR tab if you revisit later. Some of the exceptions you're going to get when you do where you could get when you're doing a compliance review on the home program, it's going to tell you the total count is below the program requirement. So like in this situation, I have one event that is a low unit with a tenant event with a low unit, and I need to have 5. So that's going to tell me, hey, I got to go back and look and see why these, how many units are fixed? Did I not do that? Did they not have events? Did the owner agent not, provide home data for some of these events? That gives you a starting point, so you can go and, get your data from a data view, filter on your property and your tenant event compliance period or tenant event dates, and then find out, why is this happening? What's going on? Let me talk to the owner agent. And some of the easier ones that are really basic, the household income is above the eligible high home income limit and the rent is overcharged. Now, we haven't updated this to show the exact values it's pulling in, but that may be something that's, down the road at some point. So those are relatively easy. You can look at the home income and rent limits on, our income and rent limits data view, or you can pull one of the reports that are in the report section to check those income and rent limits for homes specifically. The household is occupied by an eligible student. So the full-time student exception is either not defined for the household or the household member. And so let me kind of bring this up and look at it real quick. And let me make sure in 2021, I put all these little cheat notes on here for which property of my properties I was playing with and where I needed to go. So in this particular example, we have 2021, a B04. And I apologize for my computer's just upset that I'm trying to do 2 things at once or 10 things at once or whatever it is. So when we go over here, as you know, it's going to give you this, you can pop into it and say, okay, this is going to take you directly to the event on the property for this specific tenant event date. And then you're going to be able to see the household members. So here we have full-time students. And when we click into the tenant event, some of the fields that we had added is, I don't have them memorized. I'm very disappointed in myself. Home, full, or part-time student, and home student exception. And then if you need to add an exception here, you can. Or if you just want to do it at the complete, just at the tenant event household level, you have the option of going in and updating on the tenant event itself with the exception if there is one. Single parent, dependent child. And then when you go back in and you evaluate this, that exception is going to go away. I did test this the other day. It really happens, but I'm not going to spend time going through and waiting for that one to evaluate. Oh, I apologize. So we're kind of the screens. Whoop. I've obviously put some random blue boxes on here that I wasn't supposed to, but I think it was just to cover the first and last names. So these screenshots kind of talk about what we just went through as far as how you set those values and how we now have the home student information on a household member for home. Another exception you might see is the program funds rule. If the percentage of units designated for home where the total household income is at or below 60%, that means, less than 90% of these units are hitting this mark. And that's what that exception usually means. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering most of these exceptions, but as usual, if you have any questions about some home exceptions, reach out. We can sit down and go through some of the functionality and answer any other questions you may have. So now our poll question, which we're going to start here in a second, is how many home properties does your agency maintain? Less than 5, 5 to 10, 10 or more.
Hey, Sarah, I will share the results out loud and in the chat as well so attendees can see it.
Okay. All right, we are over time.
So we had for less than 5, 0 responses, 5 to 10, 0 responses, 10 or more, 11 responses.
Good to know. Awesome. Okay. And we have discovered that the reason that the poll answers are not showing is because I downloaded a version instead of sharing the presentation. Yes, that's probably exactly what happened, Sam. Sam's perfect. I am not. So there's that. All right. So now we're going to talk very briefly. And how much time do we have, Sam? I'm going to make sure that I'm not.
You have about 15 minutes.
Perfect. Okay. We're going to be done a little bit early, I think. We're talking about the additional set-asides program. And I think one of the things that I get a lot of questions about is, why is this happening? This is over income. It should generate an exception. No, it shouldn't, because our additional set-asides is a completely separate animal from LIHTC or home. And it's going to test income and rent values only. It's very simplistic. It just goes through and says, yep, nope, and that's it. It's not going to test your LIHTC rules. It's not going to test your home rules. It doesn't care about recertifications. It doesn't care about next available unit. It just cares about income and rent. So when we talk about our layer types, now this is one of our, I think one of Kelly's favorite properties in our system. Before we had average income, we had a way to set that up to track it in our additional set-aside program, but we're not going to be doing that. You should be using AIT by this point, but you may have other programs that you need to go in and make sure that you have a certain amount of tenant events or units that meet a certain percent of AMI that may be lower. And so when we talk about layer type's a non-system pick list, and you can kind of name it whatever you want. And that's kind of an internal choice for how you want to track your state level programs or other programs that you have. And then you can just set those up however you want on each property that's going to be using them. So you can customize the name of the program very easily. Income will only test income, meaning if you have like a layer that's only income, you can do that. You can have a rent only that will only test rent. And then if you choose a layer that's income and rent, it's going to test both. And you have the option of choosing when you do your income limits, which home income limit or which income limits do you want to use? Do you want to use home or you want to use LIHTC? And then for rent testing, you can use LIHTC home or FMR. And if you have special needs designations, you can also just, hey, I want to test all these special needs units that are, for example, elderly, and then you can fix them so they can't be changed by anybody else as long as this is selected. The exceptions, the way these work, they display for all units across all buildings. Additional set-asides isn't going to parse out values by BEN. It's just going to like, here's all the units that are LIHTC, and we're going to do this. It will display which BEN number the unit is in that did not or did meet. And we've had some internal discussions and possibly a user group item that's going to we'll see where that goes, but make it a little bit easier to find out, okay, well, this didn't meet the income, why? And this one did. And if you're expecting a lot more, give you a way to look at the data to find out what's over and what's not without having to spend a lot of times hunting and pecking through your data view. That's an improvement that I would like to see, and I know some of you would as well. But all units marked as unit type of low income will be evaluated for additional set-asides. So when you see the units that show up in here that did not and that did meet, it's just looking at your LIHTC low income unit type, low income units for any specific compliance period. Poll question number 3. Does your agency utilize the additional set-aside program in ProLink HFA? And the answers are yes, no, and I'm not sure how to use it. Ten seconds left to answer the poll.
Okay, Sarah, the responses I have for that are 8 people said yes, 1 person said no, and 4 people said, I am not sure how to use it.
All right, so for the 4 people who aren't sure how to use it, we need to get together and talk about that. That's something internally that we might end up doing a webinar for at some point in 2024. But if that's something you want to get together and have like a 1-hour training session on how to do that, reach out through support tickets, email me directly, and we can talk about what you need to know, what you don't understand, and I will do my darndest to explain it and make it easy and pleasant to use. So those are our results. And I think the last one I have, the last slide that I wanted to go over really quick that I slipped in was how finalizing the compliance review. Because I know that a lot of times we get tickets about, I can't finalize this. I don't know why. So here we're going to try to give you enough information to find out why you can't finalize it if you run into this. So first of all, if it's not enabled and your finalize button is disabled, you can hover over it and it's going to give you this little, oh, these are the reasons why you can't finalize it. Sometimes it's not that great and it doesn't give you like exactly what you need. Sometimes it may not say. Most of the instances we have covered, but no missing requirements, which you wouldn't do that anyway because you want to evaluate and get that compliance review status. You have to have a permission to do this, and you have to add your annual owner certifications to the compliance file tracking. And that is kind of probably one of the biggest ones that trip everybody up. And it's just, it tells you that, well, this one actually has a record, so that's not helpful. You also cannot finalize a compliance review if reviews from previous years have not been finalized. It has to be subsequent. If you have your home program, your units are fixed and you haven't locked the fixed units, it's not going to let you. If both home and LIHTC are effective for the compliance period, tax credit type is selected. Okay. You have to have the tax credit type selected on the program. That was like 4% or 9%, I believe. Here's another one. When we talk about status on compliance reviews, we have compliance review status, we have compliance program status, and then we have tenant event submission status. Sometimes that, if your owner agents haven't hit submitted in the tenant event portal, this will probably still be in pending. So they have to submit them. And when they submit them, that's going to update your tenant event submission status to submitted. But sometimes I know that you have to, send them back to pending to let them make corrections. And they may not revalidate. They should, but if they don't, this might trip you up. And all you have to do, if you're confident that you're ready to go, you have everything that you need, you can just set this back to submitted then. If you're confident that your work with the owner agent and you've gotten all the data to finalize, you can do that. And then as long as you haven't made any changes, and when you make changes, you'll see that nifty little yellow warning up here saying, hey, you've made changes, you need to reevaluate. It's not going to let you finalize it if it's still what we call dirty. That means there's been an event that hasn't been brought into the compliance engine to evaluate, and therefore you can't finalize it. So that kind of explains that. And I think that is all we have. Do we have any questions, Kelly? Did anybody that we can address? I don't
think so.
Cool.
Yes, Sarah, I'm not seeing any in the chat.
And now we're going to have the test. Not really. Just kidding. No.
Okay, I'm going to take back screen share, guys.
Go right ahead. Thank you, ma'am.
There we go. Okay, and I'll just cover, as we end this session, we are going to start our next coffee and bagel. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining. Hope you found this as well with great value in this content. As a reminder, a copy of the PowerPoint is available under the resources link on your right-hand side of your screen, and you can go back and watch this recording session at any point at this now going forward. And you can log back into Cvent for the next 90 days and also view that recording and get the materials. The survey link is now available. So if you have any survey feedback or questions, please submit them there and we will get back to you or take it into consideration to make our conference better in the future. So now we're going to head into the next 15-minute break. We're a little bit early. We're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule at this point. So that means that Coffee and Bagel is going to open in about 5 minutes. We do that 5 minutes ahead. So at that would be 12:40 Mountain and 2:40 Eastern. That will open up. So please join if you would like to mingle with your co-attendees and see some folks. When you click that discussions item at the top of your community menu item on your homepage, that's how you get there. So go to community at the top panel, click discussions, and you will come to see a coffee and bagel room to join, or a coffee and bagel event to join. Within that event, there are rooms with 6 boxes. There's plus signs for the ones that are available to join in. So you just click that and you'll go right into a room for coffee and bagel. If no one's in there quite yet, just wait a few minutes and others will join, either ProLinkers or some of your colleagues. So please take advantage of that. And we will be rejoining for our session at 3 p.m. Eastern. And during this break, we will be picking a winner for a $50 gift card. So that'll be announced when we get back together. And I think that's it. So enjoy the break and we'll see you for our next session. Again, that begins at 3 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be with Tom Royal. It's our custom data views masterclass. Tom Royal is a product manager for ProLink Solutions. So certainly tune in for that and we'll see you back then. Thank you.